Not too long back, the TCU ball club had a crossroads where they had to make a decision whether Gary Patterson was going to be the man to continue to lead the Horned Frogs all the way to a new promised land of a new age of college football. Perhaps Oklahoma State is finding themselves in the same exact situation. So let's check in crossover edition with TCU to see how they're feeling down in Fort Worth.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for dropping by to make this your first listen. We've got a special edition today. We've got a crossover edition. But today we got to remind you, fine folks, that we are partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now with FanDuel, where you can make a $5 bet and get $150 back in bonus bets if your $5 hauler's a winner. Make sure that you get with FanDuel.com to get started today. Meanwhile, we get started in the conversation of Oklahoma State versus TCU. And as you can see, I don't know that it'll be super sunny for my main man, Mike Gundy, but Steven Simcox, Locked On TCU Horned Frogs. How are we feeling today, my guy?
I'm good, man. It's always good to talk to you. We were talking a little bit before we got started. We met up like as you were launching the show, and It's been a rocket ship for you. And I love the passion you bring to the table. I've gotten to know, I have a friend and a former coworker. Her name's Sarah Jamar and her family. They're big Oklahoma State alums, so they go to a lot of games in Stillwater. I love the passion of the community there. I'm being loyal and true. Like, you guys get it. You're in it. And I know it's been a rough year, but yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. And yeah, man, I mean, I think like we talked about it a little bit before we got started. You know, I was there for the end of the Gary Patterson era, and it was this very weird thing because I think nationally people were like, well, how could TCU ever do better than Gary Patterson? Like, you have to be grateful for what he brought to the table. But, you know, as people that were sitting there watching it, a lot of us were like, listen, he built an incredible standard, but he's not really living up to that right now. And so, I mean, not to put words in your mouth, Cody, but I think that's probably what a lot of people are feeling right now. Yes, Mike Gundy did an outstanding job. He's been a great, consistent coach, but he's also built the standard that now he has to live up to. And their expectations are much different than they were when he took the job so long ago.
Dude, you are so spot on. I will gladly accept you putting those words in my mouth because I don't know that I could have said it any better. Yeah, he is the man, the mullet, the myth, the legend. He's all of it. He deserves all of the accolades as well. But if you're going to continuously raise the bar, you have to be able to meet expectations. And I don't know that we've been doing that even to some degree recently. As it turns out, whenever you take 2020, 2022, and then the first part of last season, this has now become more of a trend than a one-off situation. It appears as though we fixed a lot of things last season, but maybe that was a little bit of a mirage or a dog and pony show, as I like to say. So, but as you look for this particular matchup, and you do find the ability to draw the parallels, whenever you're looking at it from a TCU fan perspective, I know, of course, knee-jerk reaction right off the bat, Sonny Dykes takes you to a national title game appearance. So, of course, right, everybody in Purple Country is very, very happy. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you kind of fell off a little bit last season. This season, you're kind of up and down. It's better than being just down and stomped on week in and week out. But is TCU Country still very happy with the decision-making process by the head brass at TCU to make this move? And do you guys still feel like it's the right momentum and trajectory moving forward?
There's definitely a lot of pressure on Sonny right now. I mean, I think if you look at the record overall, 5-4, I feel like most people were thinking before the season, Cody, 8-4, 7-5 was probably the most likely possibility. So if you think of it that way, you're not that far off. I feel like the problem is the lows have been so low. I mean, losing to Houston at home, that on national TV, like, that's bad. Getting embarrassed by SMU, that frankly is a program that's been your little brother for a long time and, made that jump to the ACC and talked a lot of smack in the offseason. And I think a lot of TCU fans were like, okay, SMU, like, whatever. Well, they ate our lunch in Dallas, and that was a rough moment. You blow a 21-point lead to UCF. You lose to another rival in Baylor. So all that starts to add up. I also just think Gary's teams were always so tough, physical, defensive-minded. Sonny's a different type of dude. I mean, he's an offensive-minded guy. That's not really the identity of his teams in the past. So there's some consternation going on, but at the same time, I think most people kind of see like long-term, maybe this could work. After that first year, Cody, I was like, man, we really lucked out. Like, this might be another dude who could be here for a decade. I don't get that vibe.
As I would like to say, Steven, you were in purple horny toad heaven.
That's right.
Like to coin the phrase.
That's right. But one thing I wanted to bring up to you, because I remember when, at the end of the Gary era, he was always a dude that wore his heart on his sleeve. He was very passionate. He would say things that were pretty outlandish. And for a long time when he was winning, a lot of us were like, that's our guy.
That's our man.
This is our dude. Like, he's kind of like our crazy uncle. Like, he says wild things, but he loves us and he's with us and he's got our back. But then when the losses start to pile up, all of a sudden a lot of these like kind of paranoid, sort of weird one-off rants and press conferences, suddenly you're like, man, Uncle Gary's kind of losing it. Like, I don't know if I want to bring my new girlfriend around him at Thanksgiving, because I'm not sure what he's going to say. And I hope nobody brings up politics at the table, because he's got some hot takes about that I don't know where it's going to go. So the latest Mike Gundy rant, I know you're passionate about it. It seemed very out of place and odd, where he basically kind of went LeBron, where he was like, hey, if you're criticizing me, you're broke and I'm doing better than you. Yeah. What do you make of this, and what kind of his status is right now amongst people that have been behind him for so long?
Dude, that might be the most interesting question I've ever received on this show, because I don't know, dude. It's really hard to pinpoint. He is a legend. He deserves a statue, right? Again, there's a lot of parallels between him and Gary Patterson. Yeah. But at the same time, in this new age of college football, the landscape has shifted. It's changing. And I don't think that there's completely zero chance of no more realignment, right? There's still a very possibility that there's more coming. And you have to be able to put yourself in a position to know that you're going to be safe. I think by and large, Oklahoma State has felt a lot of sense of security in knowing that we're okay no matter what. But I don't give a hoot who you are. Look at Cincinnati. If Cincinnati would not have gone to the Final Four, right, would all of that momentum been enough for them to get in the Big 12? Especially if we'd have known it would have been without Luke Fickell? Probably not. But they were able to strike while the iron was hot, and it was a good time for them to capitalize on the momentum. As an Oklahoma State fan, we haven't really stressed a lot about not having enough momentum, but we're there now. And when everybody says, well, you can't get rid of Gundy because you'll go backwards, it's like we're dead last place, not only in the conference, but we are the dead last place team in the country in the Power Four, the Power Four CFP style of conversation,
right?
Last in offense and defense. So, like, the people that are scared that we go backwards without Mike Gundy, it's like, well, where do you go backwards from? Because I'm pretty sure dead last in America and dead last in the Big 12, you're pretty much already there. That's the epitome of rock bottom.
Yeah. I mean, it is like one of those things where I feel like people don't understand, if they're not watching every week, maybe how broken it is. They're just like, oh, Oklahoma State, like traditionally they've been good. I guess, Alan Bowman, and we'll get to more specific players in a minute, but not that he was one of the elite quarterbacks in America, but he had been around for a long time, obviously, and there was at least an expectation that, okay, this guy can get the job done and he knows what to do. What's been the breakdown here? And Cody, like, moving forward, where do they go at QB? I know, like, Rangel showed some things in that game against BYU, and they got a young guy whose name escapes me right now, but I know that they really like. But what does this look like, I guess, 2025 and beyond, as far as, the pipeline? And I assume a lot of that depends on the coaching staff too.
Well, Stephen, how dare you be a consummate professional, because that is precisely what we're about to talk about in the next segment, is some of the players and the guys that we have lined up. But as a little teaser before we get to segment 2, I will say I would rather gouge my eyes out with a hot iron than continue to watch Alan Bowman pretend to play quarterback. I know it's shocking that Oklahoma State fans are just completely over him, but it's not just the fans. When you watch the game, the players are over the Alan Bowman experiment as well. I know it's kind of a unwritten rule, right, that you never give up per se, but it looks like Alan Bowman's had people give up on him, possibly because Mike Gundy's given up on the team, or maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. I've been called worse once before, and I've also been wrong once before back in 97. But you don't need to have the opportunity of being wrong like me whenever you have the capabilities behind you to secure your future more so now than ever. Make sure that you do so, because you don't know what the country is going to continue to do. So you need to set yourself up for the best future physically possible. Robinhood is the golden standard whenever you're trying to get that silver spoon taste and the financial flavors passed on to everybody in your family. The 1% is with Robinhood, and Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society, that 1%. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APR on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, make sure that you visit robinhood.com/gold. Invest in yourself. It does involve some risks, so make sure that you're taking care of yourself with the gold membership that is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. And we're not done. We're talking about capitalization on monetary gains. So that's the fun way of saying FanDuel can help you out today. I know the Cowboys can't tackle oxygen, but you can tackle your next biggest deal with some NFL Cowboys and some NFL action with America's #1 sports book. Right now, you can bet $5 and get 150 bones back in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. This is the sportsbook app that gives you everything you need to place your bets live on NFL, Cowboys, all over the country. Whenever you get that tingling sensation in the middle of the game, whether you're a Cowboy fan or a TCU Horned Frog, you can check the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more, the same place where you place your bets from. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started today. $150. You can get it if your $5 winner is a bet that wins you that money. Go to FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, buddy. Now we'll shift to the conversation of the players. And yes, Alan Bowman has not been, I don't know, he hasn't been sufficient throughout the course of the season. You did mention the backup quarterback. Of course, the shiny new toy that everybody's excited about is always going to be the backup. And Zane Flores was Mr. Nebraska. He holds the all-time Nebraska leading record, but he had an injury, right? What the season would have looked like if we would have gone to him or somebody like a Garrett Rangel earlier in the year, right? That's the debatable part of this whole conundrum with Mike Gundy sticking with Alan Bowman. But here we are in this precarious situation where it appears as though we're going to roll with Alan Bowman again, although it doesn't make any sense because we went with our fourth-string quarterback, Maya Smith, at the end of the game, and oh my goodness, what does he do? He drives us down the field and scores immediately. Why? Because he's a mobile quarterback. We all know the numerical advantages when you have a mobile quarterback, right? And whenever you have a statue that has a propensity to throw the ball to the other team or the stands more than his own guys, that's typically going to be a problem. I don't know what the solution is for Alan Bowman other than the fact that the dude probably is going to have a better hand at coaching than he did at playing. It is time to see Maya Smith and see if he can do something against TCU because the small sample size we got was very impressive.
Yeah, and you also wonder, I mean, for Oklahoma State, like what's holding you back from giving him some reps here? I mean, it's not like, I guess you're not really playing for anything, right? It's one of those things where you can throw the kitchen sink out there and at least see what he has to do. But, I mean, QB kind of transitions me into the talk about Josh Hoover. You know, Josh, if you look at the numbers, it's like, wow, this dude's putting up insane stats. Now, Kendall Briles' offense kind of lends itself to helping the quarterback out with completion percentage, with yardage, because they're going to throw the ball all over the place. He took over last year when Chandler Morris went down, and he's been like the thing, Cody, I love about him. The intangible stuff seems like it's off the charts. He came in, the team responded to him well. I think he's a good leader, but you know as well as I do, leadership and talent kind of go hand in hand. Like you can be great at the leadership part, but if you don't produce at a certain level, right, and it kind of gets stale. I think to this point he's done enough one of the big issues, though, and you talked about with the dual threat aspect, he's just not really a runner. And that's a huge part of what Kendall Browse wants to do. That's also, Cody, just a big part of college football now. Like, it's hard to think of a QB these days that's just a true pocket passer that at least doesn't have that threat to tuck it and go or be someone in the zone read game. That being said, I think he's a special passer. He's got a good arm. I think he's got a good command of this offense. He'll be your guy next year. The dude behind him, Haas Haney, for people that might not know, he played at Toledo, which is like one of the premier, high school programs in the state of Texas. And he's gotten some reps this year as a true freshman. That's mainly been like in some kind of wacky Wildcat stuff. So I think Josh is probably the dude next year as well. I wanted to ask about Ollie Gordon because I know, he's a dude and he's had his moments this year. It hasn't been as consistent as you would like. Cody, is this just offensive line play? Is it people loading up to stop him and not having to worry about the pass game? What's going on with his production this season?
But I think it's an even mixture of both. I think the story is out on how to stop Alan Bowman. And because people figured out on a way to stop Alan Bowman, it was a byproduct of stopping Ollie Gordon, right? Because how you stop Alan Bowman is you just make him throw over and over and over and over and over. So on top of that being a good game plan for everybody to stack the box anyways, right? That leads itself some open abilities to stop Ollie Gordon. On top of that, he's been getting hit in the backfield, according to PFF, over 52% of the season. So when he gets the ball, he's having to make multiple dudes miss before he ever even gets past the line of scrimmage. That seems to be, a problem. I don't care who you are or how good you are. If everybody's keying on you and everybody doesn't respect your quarterback, you're not really going to get a lot of, legitimate defenses that are playing the team straight up. So everybody's playing Ollie Gordon as opposed to playing some, strategic defense. Right. And it makes sense. It works. Yeah. And our defense, again, we can't tackle oxygen. So since we talked about Ollie, what does TCU have at running back? Because I know you guys have gone up and down with a bunch of injuries and having to manipulate some things back there. But we tend to allow everybody's running back to get right this year. So who might be able to get right against the Cowboys this Saturday?
Well, that's intriguing because it might be a weakness on weakness thing. TCU has not run the ball well this year. They started the season with Cam Cook as the guy he's a redshirt freshman, was a 4-star recruit out of Round Rock, Texas. And there was a lot of hope around him, a lot of excitement. O-line has been pretty tough. At least they're a good pass protection unit, Cody, but they do not move people very well. And so getting people off the line of scrimmage has been a struggle. But honestly, the names to know, they got a couple more guys, Jeremy Payne and Trent Battle, who will come in as well and get some carries and have done some nice things. But the way they've mitigated this is Savion Williams, who is also a big receiver on the outside. Yeah. They moved him into this kind of wildcat package where they just snap him the ball directly and he gets after it. He's 6'5", 225. He's tough to bring down. And so that's become their main source of running the ball. I would expect to see that more this week. And, they've added a few wrinkles to it. He's handed the ball off some. He threw a pass to Jack Besh in the end zone in the game against Baylor. I don't know how much more they're going to try to add on to it as the season goes on, but that would be the name to know. Now, one other interesting matchup here to me is two defensive tackles out for the Frogs, Marcus Deal and Hakeem Ajibalaiba. They're two kind of starting interior defensive linemen. So sort of a mash unit up front. I know Oklahoma State's had their problems in blocking people as well, but that does, at least on paper, seem to me like, okay, maybe this is a week where Ollie could get loose a little bit because this defense has had issues stopping the run and they're down some folks. But, along with that, one guy that I really love is Brennan Presley. And I don't know what you kind of made of his season and his career, but he's a special wide receiver, Cody.
Well, dude, if Alan Bowman's going to continue to be QB1, I can tell you that a decent amount of the fan base is going to be tuning in to see Brennan Presley get the receptions record. He should get it in this game. I would be pretty surprised if he didn't get it, which would catapult him above Rashawn Woods, the most receptions of all time in Oklahoma State history. And since we don't have Ollie Gordon running for a Doak Walker again, that seems to be kind of the calling card of the season. Now, I will admit that if we see some Maya Luiake-Smith, it will be an injection for the entirety of the fan base, which I think we need that right now, especially with Mike Gundy's most recent comments. It's a wild time to be a Cowboy, but Brennan Presley has been the saving grace of the season. Nick Martin's out defensively. Colin Oliver's out defensively. We've had some injuries. You'll pop up, but that's not the reason that we're having such an abysmal year. So Brennan Presley is the highlight of that, and Trey Rucker on the defensive side of the ball, when he's engaged and has been engaged for 95% of the games this season, he's a complete difference maker. Whenever you're thinking about the TCU side defensively, who's the name that everybody needs to pay attention to before we get ready to shift gears one more again here?
So they brought in Andy Avalos as their defensive coordinator. He was the head coach at Boise last year and had spent some time in Oregon as a DC as well.
Okay.
So he comes in with a 3-3 kind of stack look. The guy that I would say, honestly, with the injuries they've had recently, Devin Deal's a name to know. He's a transfer from Tulane in the offseason, and he plays their stud linebacker position, which is basically just your stand-up outside linebacker rush end. He's been able to get to the quarterback lately and has shown some ability as a pass rusher to be disruptive and make plays. The secondary has been kind of a revolving door, but Lamarian James has been the most consistent player there. So I would think he gets the lion's share of the matchup against Brennan Presley, and that'll be fun to watch those two guys go at it. He likes to play physical press coverage. So those would be the names to know. I mean, the TCU defense has struggled at times. Both these teams kind of have their qualms, but should be a fun matchup. We'll also talk some Big 12 storylines too. The cannibalization of the league, the parity. Is it good for the national brand, or is it going to hurt them in the playoff rankings? I think we got part of our answer, Cody, in last night's reveal, but we can talk about that more next.
Well, I tell you what, the Big 12 is definitely more bipolar than my ex-old lady, but perhaps she wouldn't have been an ex-old lady if I would have had some hymns on tap, but I didn't. So we are where we are. Yes, you heard it right, gentlemen. To be the king ding-a-ling in the sheets, maybe you should get rocking and rolling today with hymns. Your sex life is very important, right? And I'm assuming your schedule is probably busy enough to not want to go to the doctors. That's okay. If ED is an issue, HIMS has you covered. It'll allow you to get personalized ED treatment that'll let you become him. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. You ain't got to go anywhere or do anything. The process is 100% online. There's no need for the uncomfortable doctor's visits anyways. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMS can help you find ED options that work for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That is HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. Go to hims.com/lockedon. Make sure that you can go be the king dingling of your man cave, your living room, or your bridal room, whatever. Realistically speaking, they've got you covered. Just make sure that you get squared away today with HIMS, the best in the game, to be the king dingling. All right, buddy. Now we get to shift gears one more time before we bring this thing on home here. The Big 12 storylines, they write themselves, like you had mentioned, because of the cannibalization. You do not know who's going to win each game. And I tell you, from a storyline perspective, I think maybe you and I have talked previously about how I don't know that I fully bought into the narrative that if you don't have, flag bearer, a Texas, an OU, an Ohio State, a Michigan, if you don't have that, your conference is going to suffer. I really thought that the parity would be very beneficial for the conference because it would make every single week very intriguing from a national, eyeballs perspective. The cannibalization is good for TV, but it's not so good for building brands. Do you think that the Big 12 cannibalization is always going to be viewed as something that is beneficial from a TV viewership? Or do you kind of lean on the fence of eventually we've got to have a couple of heavy hitters, announce themselves as a perennial top 10, top 5 team no matter what? Or do you think it's okay that 1 year it's TCU, 1 year it's Oklahoma State, 1 year it's BYU? What do you say, sir?
That's an outstanding question. I think there's some definite benefits to it. It gives you the idea of, okay, I can turn on a Big 12 game at whatever time every single Saturday, and I should get a good matchup. I should get a close game. And I've seen that online, kind of perusing Twitter on a Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. There's people that are like, hey, Big 12 stuff is happening right now. You need to tune into this. I think the issue you could run into is, Cody, you don't want to become like the MAC, right? Where it's like, oh, that's a fun league. It's Tuesday night. Everybody scores a lot of points and it's parity each and every week. I don't think the Big 12 is going to become that, but you just don't want to get to a place where it's like, yeah, it's not the Big 10, it's not the SEC, but it's a fun league where there's some good teams. Now, I think BYU's not getting enough respect. I feel like Iowa State, it's unfortunate they failed Texas Tech, but I think that's a good football team who could, go in and hold their own in a playoff scenario. I think the big question moving forward is there anybody who can recruit at a level consistently that they could actually be a flag bearer type program? I don't think it's a bad thing if you have parity, but right now, I mean, like the biggest brand, and I'll put an egg in my face for this. I was not a believer in Colorado. I spent a lot of my offseason, 2 off seasons ago, fighting with the Church of Dion fans who were telling me like they're coming for you. And then TCU, embarrassed themselves on national television to start the year. But to Dion's credit, that team's good, man. I mean, like they're not built in the traditional way where it's all about the offensive and defensive line, but they've got outstanding skill players. They've bought in, like they play hard. But I don't know how long he's going to be there, right? Like once Shedeur leaves, I'm not sure if he says, hey, I'm not interested in this anymore. He seems like the guy that could take over from a recruiting standpoint. But I think all these schools, like Oklahoma State, why it's a state school with a lot of resources and people that want to be good and a loyal fan base that's committed. Why could they not find a great coach that says, hey, we're going to recruit well, we're going to develop, and we're going to be like the team in this league? I think TCU's in a similar situation. I think there's a lot of schools that feel like they could do it. It's just about somebody emerging. But Big 12 basketball, like it's each and every night. You don't know what's going to happen, but you have elite teams. I think that's the thing. Somebody's going to have to go on a national stage and win a big game so that people sit up and say, all right, it's not just a bunch of average teams beating up on each other every week. There's good programs here. I just think it's going to take time, and we don't want to have patience as people generally, and I'm right there with everybody else.
That was a very fun and eloquent way of saying that if you can compete for national titles, then the parity is beneficial. And I think that's actually a very good connection that you made with basketball that I hadn't made. But you are right. The parity is still the same, right? It's still a cannibalization league. The difference is at the end of the cannibalization, you have a KU that can win a national title or a Baylor or a Houston or an Arizona. So I agree with that. It is going to take somebody to go in there and prove everybody wrong. And I will admit that is one reason we can all hate on TCU collectively, is because I think a lot of us, everyone in the conference got around TCU. And after what you did to Michigan, we were all pumping that Big 12 is here for life, baby. And then the national title game happened. And although us in Big 12 country, we remember what y'all did to Michigan, the national perception was, oh, TCU is terrible. They should have never been there. Nobody talks about what y'all did to Michigan, who turned around and won the national title the next season. But that's because perception, unfortunately, does matter. Is it always reality? No, but it does in fact matter. And I think that the fact that we don't have somebody exactly grabbing that mantle, the flag of the kings of the Big 12 yet, it's not a bad thing, but I'm with you. Somebody has to go break the door down and do something significant in a national title game. Because realistically, buddy, if y'all would have lost that national title game by like 16 points, 14 points, 18 points, I think by and large, it would have given a little bit of a different layer of respect for the Big 12 nationally. But the score was, automatically thrown around as something that proves the Big 12 is just not quite ready yet. We need a TCU or a BYU to go in and break the door down, of course, but just to put that game, I don't know, out of people's minds, because the overall score was not fun. Speaking of scores, do you agree with that assessment that the national perception of the Big 12 is, well, look what happened to TCU in the national title game?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think it's unfortunate that it ended that way, but there's really no way to refute it. Like, they were on the biggest stage and they weren't up to the task that day. I don't think the final margin was indicative of the gap between those teams, but bottom line was, it is what it is. Like, people are going to throw it around, and it doesn't help that you followed it up with a 5-7 season. Like, if TCU could have come out and maybe gone 10-2 and made some noise against another big school, then maybe it's like, all right, they just had a bad day at the office, but you can't have a bad day at the office in the national title game. I think this is going to be a fascinating game, Cody. Come into Fort Worth, Oklahoma State, TCU. I do feel like the Pokes will score this week. I think the reason I keep coming back to the Frogs is I'm just not sure this Oklahoma State defense can get stops against this TCU offense consistently. Yeah. So if you're asking me for a score prediction for this weekend, I'll say TCU 35, Oklahoma State 28. I think it's a close game. Pokes have stayed close in a lot of these games, but ultimately the Frogs prevail. What are some of your thoughts about, the keys here and ultimately what you think could go down on Saturday night, I believe, 6 p.m. kick?
Well, I mean, I'm with you as far as the concerns defensively, and we haven't, again, been good up front or in the back end, right? So it's kind of a pick your poison moment with Oklahoma State. You don't really know what you're going to get out of TCU's rushing attack, but at the same time, we haven't been able to slow anybody's rushing attack down. So whether it's Savion Williamson back there or if it's going to be Hoover running over everybody, getting his best Alan Bowman impersonation on, maybe that is the thing that I find the most problematic. But for me, the prediction is going to come down to that and the fact that I don't know that we're able to lean on a run game yet, even with the addition of Rodney Fields in the backfield. I think that has been something that's beneficial. And even if Ollie Gordon was 100%, I don't know that we'd be able to control the clock enough to keep you guys out of the end zone. So I'm with you, and pretty close. I'm going to say 35-21 TCU because I think we still have some capabilities. That's the biggest frustration is we have the talent. This season, it's all coaching. That is the maddening part of it. And I think, again, the parallels between Mike Gundy and Gary Patterson, something that proves that the talent was always there with TCU is what y'all did immediately with Sonny Dykes. And, of course, Sonny had to bring some of his own people over and make it work. But by and large, that was a lot of Gary Patterson's dudes. So from a TCU fan perspective, I'm sure a decent amount of you went, wait a second, we had this talent the whole time? We just weren't using it properly. That's where we're at. Everybody that has watched any semblance of football throughout the course of their lifetime can see, Oklahoma State has dudes, right? Mm-hmm. Big, strong, SEC-sized guys, but it's just not translating to being a cohesive unit.
No, I mean, it's one of those classic things where, I mean, like whether it was Quentin Johnston, who has gone on to do some things in the NFL, for years he was there with Gary, and it was just like, how are we not getting this guy the ball? Like, he's a freak of nature. If you made a receiver in a lab, he would spit out and look like Quentin Johnston. Yeah. You have to find a way to throw him, or Max Duggan and his toughness and his ability. The final thing I'll ask you, Cody, just your gut. I think Sonny has saved his job for now, just unless the last 3 games are a complete disaster that's unavoidable. But Mike Gundy, is he on the sidelines next year for Oklahoma State?
Yeah, I just think we owe him too much money. I mean, that's it. I do think that in a normal world, if he had a normal contract, this would be enough in conjunction with the disastrous season to, get somebody walking papers or at least put on a really tight leash. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say that I don't think there's any way we get rid of him just because we don't have 20 some odd million laying around campus readily available to hand any of our coaches, right? It just is what it is. And secondarily, I just don't know that anybody has the cojones to do it, to be honest with you, right? So mad props to the brass at TCU who are willing to make that decision, because it couldn't have been easy, right? Running a legend out of town never will be easy. Everybody would love for a legend to go out on his shield his way and retire the right way. Like, we all want that storybook ending, but sometimes it doesn't happen. And as much as people want to get up in arms about, the Mike Gundy leaving, we could go backwards. And some people get irritated that this section of our fan base points to TCU. It's like, no. TCU did it. and they got rid of Gary Patterson. And then immediately with Gary Patterson's players, Sonny Dykes installed a new scheme that was inherently better. And then, of course, you've gone back down to 5-7. It is kind of a curious conversation, but at the same time, I think that a lot of TCU fans, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys think that you made the right call, and beating Michigan, playing for a Big 12 title and playing for a national title is still worth the squeeze of getting rid of Gary Patterson.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if Sonny is the dude, but I think time had run its course. And ultimately, like, it wasn't just the losses. It was Gary, and I get it. Like, he did it his way for a long time. But, Cody, he just had no interest in learning the new way of college football. Like, he was publicly very against NIL and the portal and all those things, and he just didn't want to figure it out. And, like, I understand, he built the program his way with his type of players, and he wanted to continue that. But it got to the point where it's like, all right, if you're not going to innovate, then we're going to have to make that move. And, yeah, Jeremiah Donati, the athletic director, I mean, he ruffled a lot of feathers doing that. But as you said, like, sometimes you just got to make a move like that and live with the consequences. And I think Donati's kind of living with it right now. There are still some people that are unhappy and are like, see, this is what we dealt with. But for the most part, I think people understand, even if they didn't get the right guy in the moment, it was time to move on from that era, right? And it is what it is.
Well, it is what it is, and the game will play out the way it does. I will say that, from this conversation, the game should be pretty close. Not that it's necessarily a quote-unquote good game, but it seems to be teams that are struggling with some of the same things on the same sides of the ball that could make this game, I don't know if ugly is the right word, but it could make it at least interesting, which has kind of been the story of the Big 12. Stephen, it's been a pleasure as always, brother, man. I greatly appreciate your time. We'll have to chat it up about basketball season because, we very well could be at the very bottom of that too. But nonetheless, it can still be kind of fun to talk about some of the greatest teams in the conference that are also some of the greatest teams in the country.
That's right. Yeah, we'll do it again in basketball season, buddy. It'll be fun. And hey, well, I mean, we're here covering it, hell or high water, right? So that's our job. We're here every day.
Yes, sir. All right, buddy. I appreciate you. Everybody, say hi, say bye to the man, the myth, the legend, also Stephen Simcox. Buddy, I greatly appreciate your time. Everybody else out there, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. All righty, y'all. You know the drill. Later, my taters.